At my grandson's graduation, my daughter-in-law called me. "You can stay home. We only want the people we love there." I hung up without saying a word. The next day, I put their house up for sale. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. The phone rang at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon. I remember because I was sitting in my kitchen, watching the sunlight filter through the lace curtains I had sewn myself 40 years ago, when everything I thought I knew about my family crumbled with a single sentence. "Francis, you can stay home. We only want people we actually love there." Aubrey's voice was crisp, matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather or what to pick up from the grocery store. Not like she was driving a knife straight through the heart of a 71-year-old woman who had spent the last 18 years quietly holding her family together. Ryan's graduation. My grandson. The boy I had rocked to sleep countless nights when his parents were too busy or too tired. The child I had taught to ride a bicycle in my driveway because his father was always working. The young man who used to call me every Sunday until Aubrey decided those calls were taking too much of his time. I didn't say anything back. What could I say? That I had already pressed my best dress? That I had been looking forward to this day for months? That I had helped pay for the very education he was celebrating? Instead, I hung up. The silence in my kitchen felt different after that call. Heavier. Like the air itself had changed. I sat there for a long time, my hands folded in my lap, trying to understand how we had gotten here. When had I become the family member they tolerated rather than loved? When had my presence become something to manage rather than celebrate? But deep down, I knew exactly when it started. It was the day my son Michael brought Aubrey home 22 years ago. She was beautiful, charming, and had a way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. Everyone except me. It started small. Little comments about how I held Ryan wrong when he was a baby. Suggestions that my cooking was too heavy for a growing child. Gentle redirections when I offered to help with anything. Always delivered with a smile. Always framed as helpful advice from a caring daughter-in-law. Over the years, those small comments grew into bigger exclusions. Family dinners that I wasn't told about until after they happened. Birthday parties where I was invited but made to feel like an intruder. Holidays where my traditions were quietly replaced with new family customs that somehow never included me. And through it all, I kept quiet. I kept writing the checks. Because that's what I did. I wrote checks. When Michael and Aubrey needed a down payment for their house 12 years ago, I wrote a check. When Ryan needed tutoring in mathematics in elementary school, I wrote a check. When their car broke down and they couldn't afford the repairs, I wrote a check. When Aubrey decided Ryan needed to attend private school, I wrote a check. I never asked for credit. I never made a big show of it. I just quietly ensured that my family had what they needed. The house payments when Michael's construction business went through a rough patch 3 years ago. The insurance premiums when Aubrey decided to stay home full-time. The endless stream of expenses that came with raising a child in today's world. But sitting in my kitchen that afternoon, listening to the clock tick on the wall, I realized something that made my chest tight with a pain I had never felt before. They didn't see any of it as love. They saw it as obligation. They saw me as a checkbook with legs, useful when needed, dismissible when not. The worst part wasn't even Aubrey's words. It was the casual cruelty of them. Like excluding me was so natural, so obvious, that she didn't even need to think about it. Like I was a problem that had been solved. I thought about Ryan, my beautiful grandson with Michael's eyes and my stubborn chin. The boy who used to spend summers with me, helping in my garden and listening to my stories about his grandfather. When had he stopped asking to visit? When had his calls become shorter, more distant? Had he asked about me at all when they were planning his graduation celebration? Or had Aubrey made that decision for everyone, the way she had been making decisions about my place in this family for years? I stood up slowly, my knees protesting after sitting still for so long. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, like the walls had moved closer together. I walked to the window and looked out at the neighborhood I had lived in for 48 years. The same houses, the same trees, the same quiet street where I had raised my son and dreamed of watching my grandchildren grow up. But today, everything looked different. Tomorrow was Ryan's graduation. Tomorrow my family would celebrate one of the most important moments of his young life, and I would not be there. Not because I was sick or traveling or unable to attend, but because they simply did not want me. The phone sat silent on the counter, but I could still hear Aubrey's voice echoing in my mind. Clear. Final. Dismissive. I had spent years wondering what I had done wrong, how I could fix whatever had broken between us. But standing there in my kitchen, with the afternoon light fading and my heart breaking in ways I didn't know were possible, I finally understood. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had simply been convenient. Until now. The next morning I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my filing cabinet. It took me 20 minutes to find the folder I was looking for, buried beneath insurance papers and old tax returns. The manila envelope was thick, filled with documents I hadn't looked at in over a decade. But when I spread them across my dining room table, the truth stared back at me in black and white. 15 Maple Street. The house where Michael, Aubrey, and Ryan lived. The house they called home, the house where I was no longer welcome. The house that belonged to me. I had forgotten, or maybe I had wanted to forget. 12 years ago, when Michael and Aubrey needed that down payment, I hadn't just given them money. I had bought the house myself, then let them live in it. It was supposed to be temporary, just until they could qualify for their own mortgage. Just until Michael's business got more stable. The deed was right there in my hands, my name printed clearly in legal type. Frances Eleanor Walsh, sole owner. I had put their names on nothing but the utility bills. I remember the day we signed the papers. Aubrey had been 8 months pregnant with Ryan, glowing and grateful. She had hugged me and called me the most generous mother-in-law in the world. Michael had promised they would pay me back, that this was just a temporary arrangement until they got on their feet. But temporary had stretched into 12 years. The gratitude had faded into expectation, then into resentment. Somehow, in their minds, my generosity had become their right. My house had become their house. My sacrifice had become invisible. I sat down hard in my dining room chair, the documents still spread before me. All these years I had been watching them live in my house, paint my walls, plant flowers in my garden, and slowly push me out of the family I was supporting. The irony was bitter in my mouth. Yesterday, Aubrey had told me I wasn't wanted at Ryan's graduation. Today, I was looking at proof that she had been living in my house for over a decade while saying it. I picked up another document. The property tax statements, all in my name. The homeowner's insurance, paid from my account. Even the mortgage payments that Michael thought he had been making to the bank had actually been going to me. I had set up the arrangement through my financial advisor to make it easier for them, to let them feel like they were being responsible homeowners instead of charity cases. But charity cases were exactly what they were. And I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter by people who couldn't survive without me. I walked to my kitchen and made coffee, my hands shaking slightly as I measured the grounds. The house felt different this morning. Not sad or empty like it had yesterday, but charged with something I couldn't quite name. Purpose, maybe. Or anger. Or maybe just the terrible clarity that comes when you finally see the truth. I thought about all the times over the years when Aubrey had made little comments about their house. How she needed to redecorate their living room. How their mortgage was such a burden. How grateful I should be that they let me visit their home for holidays. I had let her have those lies because they seemed harmless. Because it was easier than correcting her. Easier than making her feel uncomfortable about the reality of her situation. Because I had thought family was about more than who owned what. But family, I was learning, had rules. And one of those rules seemed to be that I was expected to give everything and ask for nothing in return. Not gratitude, not respect, not even basic kindness. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed, filling the kitchen with the rich smell that usually comforted me. But today nothing felt comforting. Everything felt sharp and clear and final. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Margaret Chun, the real estate agent who had helped me buy this house 48 years ago, and had stayed a friend ever since. She answered on the second ring. Frances. How lovely to hear from you. How are you, dear? I'm well, Margaret. I need to ask you about selling a property. There was a pause. Your house? Frances, are you sure? You've been there so long. Not my house. The rental property on Maple Street. It's time. I could hear Margaret shuffling papers in the background. The one where your son lives? Is he ready to move? I almost laughed at the question. Ready to move. As if any of this was about what Michael and Aubrey were ready for. That's not really my concern anymore, Margaret. Can you come by this afternoon to look at it? Another pause, longer this time. Margaret had known me for decades. She could hear something in my voice that I wasn't saying. Of course, dear. How about 3 o'clock? Perfect. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and looking out at the garden I had tended for almost 50 years. The roses were blooming, pink and white clusters that my late husband had planted for our 10th anniversary. The vegetable patch was neat and orderly, already showing signs of the tomatoes and peppers I had started from seed. This house, this garden, this life I had built with my own hands. It was enough. It had always been enough. I didn't need to keep buying my way into a family that had already decided I didn't belong. At 2:30, I drove to Maple Street. I parked across from the house I owned and looked at it with new eyes. The lawn was well maintained. The flower beds Aubrey had insisted on installing were colorful and neat. It was a beautiful house, worth significantly more now than when I had bought it. I wondered if they had any idea. In all these years, had Michael and Aubrey ever actually looked at the deed? Had they ever wondered why they didn't receive property tax bills or insurance statements? Had they ever questioned why their mortgage payments were so much lower than their neighbors? Or had they simply accepted it all as their due, the way they had accepted everything else I had given them? At exactly 3 o'clock, Margaret's car pulled up behind mine. She was a small woman in her 70s, still sharp and efficient after 40 years in real estate. She looked at the house, then at me. It's a beautiful property, Francis. In this market, it should sell quickly. I nodded. How quickly? With the right price. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I thought about Ryan's graduation happening right now without me. I thought about Aubrey's voice on the phone yesterday, so certain of her power, so casual in her cruelty. Let's price it to sell fast, Margaret. I want it on the market tomorrow. The for sale sign went up on Tuesday morning at 8:15. By 8:45 my phone was ringing. I was in my garden, deadheading the roses and enjoying the quiet morning, when Aubrey's name flashed across my screen. I almost didn't answer. Part of me wanted to let her stew in whatever panic had driven her to call. But curiosity won. Francis. Her voice was tight, strained. None of the casual cruelty from our last conversation. We need to talk. Do we? I kept my voice even, my hand steady as I snipped another spent bloom. There's a for sale sign in our yard. Some mistake with the real estate company. I called them, but they said the owner put it up. There must be some confusion with the property records. I set down my pruning shears and sat on my garden bench. The morning sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in days, I felt something close to peace. There's no confusion, Aubrey. Silence. Then slowly. What do you mean? I mean, I own the house. I've owned it for 12 years. And now I'm selling it. The silence stretched so long I wondered if she had hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Smaller. That's impossible. Michael handles all the paperwork. The mortgage, the insurance, everything. Michael handles utility bills and lawn care, Aubrey. I handle everything else. I always have. I could hear her breathing, sharp and quick. You're lying. This is some kind of mistake. Michael. I heard footsteps, muffled voices, the sound of papers being shuffled. Then Michael's voice, confused and growing louder. What do you mean Mom owns the house? We've been making mortgage payments for 12 years. To me, I said clearly. You've been making payments to me. Check your bank statements, Michael. Look at where the money actually goes. More silence. More shuffling. Then Aubrey's voice again, but this time it was shaking. Why would you do this? Why would you lie to us for 12 years? I almost laughed. Even now, even faced with the truth, she was making me the villain. I didn't lie to anyone. When you needed help 12 years ago, I bought you a house. I let you live in it, pay what you could afford, and build a life there. I never asked for gratitude or recognition. I just asked to be part of that life. You are part of our life, Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? When was the last time you invited me to dinner, Michael? When was the last time any of you called just to see how I was doing? When was the last time I saw my grandson outside of formal holidays where I was tolerated? Not welcomed. Neither of them answered. And yesterday, I continued, my voice growing stronger, your wife called to tell me I wasn't wanted at Ryan's graduation, that you only wanted people you actually love there. So I'm simply respecting that wish. If I'm not part of the family, then the family doesn't need to live in my house. Mom, wait. Michael's voice was desperate now. Aubrey didn't mean it like that. She was stressed about the graduation, about having enough seats, about. She meant it exactly like that. I cut him off. And honestly, Michael, I'm tired of pretending otherwise. I'm tired of being treated like an obligation. I'm tired of writing checks for people who can't be bothered to include me in their lives. This is insane, Aubrey said, her voice rising. You can't just sell our house because your feelings got hurt. We have a child, Francis. Ryan has friends here, a life here. You can't destroy that because of some misunderstanding. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply no longer providing it. I could hear Aubrey crying now, the kind of dramatic sob she had always used to get her way. Where are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do? Michael's business is just getting back on track. We can't afford to buy another house right now. That's not my problem anymore. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth. For 12 years, their problems had been my problems. Their needs had been my responsibility. Their financial struggles had been my emergency. Mom, please. Michael's voice was breaking. Let's talk about this. Come over tonight. We can work something out. I'm not coming over, Michael. I'm not welcome there, remember? That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time Aubrey invited me for dinner? When was the last time she asked my opinion about anything? When was the last time she treated me like family instead of like an inconvenience she had to manage? No answer. I've spent 12 years watching her slowly push me out of your lives while living in my house, spending my money, and benefiting from my generosity. And yesterday she made it official. So now I'm making it official too. You're being cruel, Aubrey whispered. No, Aubrey. I'm being done. I could hear them whispering to each other, urgent and panicked. Finally, Michael came back on the line. How long do we have? The realtor expects it to sell within 2 to 3 weeks. After that, the new owners will decide what they want to do about tenants. 2 weeks. Aubrey's voice was hysterical now. We can't find a new place to live in 2 weeks. This is impossible. You've had 12 years to find your own place to live. I've given you more time than most landlords would. We're not tenants, she screamed. We're family. Are we? I asked quietly. Because yesterday you made it very clear that I'm not. I hung up before either of them could respond. My garden was quiet again. Just the sound of bees in the roses and cars passing on the distant street. I picked up my pruning shears and went back to work, my hands steady, my heart surprisingly calm. The phone rang again 5 minutes later. And again 5 minutes after that. I let them all go to voicemail. I had spent 12 years being available whenever they needed me. Today they could learn what it felt like when I wasn't. By Wednesday evening, I had 17 missed calls and 12 voicemails. I finally listened to them while eating dinner alone at my kitchen table. The same table where I had sat 2 days ago when my world changed. The first few were more of the same. Aubrey crying, Michael pleading. Both of them acting like I was the unreasonable one. But by voicemail number 7, something had shifted. Mom, it's Michael. I've been going through our paperwork. All of it. And I need to talk to you. Not about the house, not about what Aubrey said. About everything else. Please call me back. His voice was different. Quieter. Like he had finally seen something he hadn't wanted to look at. I called him back at 9 o'clock, after I had finished my dinner and washed my dishes and prepared myself for whatever this conversation would bring. He answered immediately. Mom. Michael. I found the insurance papers. The property tax bills. All of it. His voice was hollow. How long have you been paying for everything? I set down my coffee cup and looked out my kitchen window at the darkness beyond. Which everything are you talking about, dear? The house, the insurance, Ryan's school, the car payments when we were behind, the medical bills when Aubrey had her surgery 3 years ago, the business loan when I was about to lose everything. He trailed off, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. Mom, there's a check here for $8,000 from last Christmas. I thought that was from both you and Dad's pension fund, but Dad's been gone for 6 years. Yes, he has. That was just you. That was your money. Yes, it was. More silence. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. How much? In total, how much have you given us? I had never added it up, never wanted to see the number in black and white. But sitting there in my kitchen with the truth finally out, I found I knew the answer anyway. Including the house? Just over $400,000, Michael. The sound he made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. 400,000. I never kept track to throw it in your face, I said gently. I kept track because I needed to manage my finances responsibly, but I never wanted you to feel guilty about it. Guilty? His voice cracked. Mom, I let my wife exclude you from my son's graduation. I let her treat you like you were some burden we had to tolerate. And you've been keeping us afloat for 12 years. I've been loving my family for 12 years. There's a difference. I heard a door slam in the background, then Aubrey's voice shrill and demanding. What are you telling her? What lies are you believing now? They're not lies, Aubrey. Michael's voice was tired, defeated. I've seen the papers. All of them. Mom has been paying for everything. The house, Ryan's school, the car, the medical bills, everything. That's impossible. She's manipulating you, making you feel guilty so you'll take her side. Take her side. Michael's voice was getting louder now. Aubrey, she owns our house. She's been paying Ryan's tuition for 3 years. She saved my business when the Henderson contract fell through. She's not manipulating anyone. She's been keeping us alive. I could hear Aubrey crying, but this time it sounded different. Not the dramatic sob she used to get her way, but the kind of crying that comes when your whole world shifts beneath your feet. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought she was just being generous with little things. I didn't know it was everything. You didn't want to know, Michael said quietly, because knowing would have meant being grateful instead of resentful. The line went quiet except for the sound of Aubrey's crying. Finally, Michael spoke again. Mom, we need to fix this. Tell me how to fix this. I closed my eyes, feeling older than my 71 years. I don't think you can fix 12 years of being taken for granted in one conversation, Michael. But we can try. Please, let me try. I thought about Ryan probably doing homework right now in the house I had bought him. I thought about all the birthdays and Christmases and school events where I had been tolerated instead of welcomed. I thought about the casual cruelty in Aubrey's voice when she told me I wasn't wanted. You want to try? I asked finally. Yes. Whatever it takes. Then here's what's going to happen. I'm not stopping the sale of the house. You've had 12 years to establish your independence, and I'm done enabling your dependence on me. Mom, I'm not finished. But I'm also not heartless. I'll forgive the debt, all of it. Consider it my final gift to your family. You'll have enough equity from what you've paid me over the years to put a down payment on something you can actually afford. I could hear him breathing, thinking, calculating. But there are conditions, I continued. Aubrey apologizes. Not to save the house, not to get something from me, but because she owes me basic human decency and has failed to provide it for years. She'll apologize, Michael said quickly. Let her speak for herself when she's ready. And second, I want one evening a week with Ryan. Dinner, homework help, whatever he needs. Not supervised by Aubrey. Not scheduled around her convenience. Just me and my grandson. Building the relationship she's been systematically destroying. Done. And third, Aubrey gets counseling. I don't care what kind, but she needs to figure out why she thinks it's acceptable to treat family members like enemies. Because if she doesn't change, Michael, you're going to lose more than just a house. You're going to lose your son the same way you almost lost me. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he had hung up. Is that what I did? Lost you. You came very close. But not completely. I looked around my kitchen at the life I had built, at the peace I had finally found. No, Michael. Not completely. But it's been close enough to hurt. We'll do whatever you want, Mom. All of it. Just please don't give up on us. I heard footsteps, then Ryan's voice in the background asking what was wrong. My heart clenched at the sound of his voice. This young man I loved so much but had been forced to love from a distance. Is that Ryan? I asked. Yeah. He's asking what's going on. He can tell we're upset. Put him on the phone. Mom. Maybe we should talk to him together first, explain. Put him on the phone, Michael. A pause, then Ryan's voice, uncertain and young. Grandma Frances? Hello, sweetheart. How was your graduation? It was good. But Grandma, why weren't you there? Mom said you were sick, but you sound fine. I closed my eyes, feeling something break open in my chest. Even now, even after everything, they were still lying to him. I wasn't sick, Ryan. I wasn't invited. What? That doesn't make sense. Of course you were invited. You're my grandma. Ask your parents about that, sweetheart. But Ryan, I want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. And if you want to see me, really see me, not just at holidays but for dinner and homework and all the normal grandparent things, then we're going to make that happen. I'd like that a lot, Grandma. I've missed you. For words. For simple words that undid 12 years of hurt and made everything worth it. I've missed you too, sweetheart. More than you know. 3 days later, Aubrey showed up at my door. I was expecting her, though not at 7 in the morning while I was still in my robe having coffee. She stood on my front porch looking smaller than usual. Her perfect blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. Francis, we need to talk. I studied her through the screen door. In all the years I had known her, I had never seen Aubrey look anything less than perfectly put together. Even during Ryan's infancy, even through Michael's business struggles, she had maintained that glossy veneer that made everything look effortless. Today she looked broken. Come in, I said, stepping aside. She followed me to the kitchen and sat at my table without being invited. I poured her coffee without asking if she wanted any. Some moments require the basic rituals of hospitality, even when the guest has spent years making you feel unwelcome in their home. I'm sorry, she said before I had even sat down. I raised an eyebrow. For what specifically? For everything. For the graduation, for the way I've treated you, for taking advantage of your generosity, for... She trailed off, tears starting fresh. For being a terrible daughter-in-law. I sipped my coffee and waited. Aubrey had always been good with words. Good at saying exactly what people wanted to hear. I needed to know if this was genuine remorse or just another performance. I didn't know, she continued. About the money, about how much you've done for us. I swear to you, Francis, I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said quietly. There's a difference. She flinched. You're right. I didn't want to know because knowing would have meant admitting that I wasn't the perfect wife and mother I pretended to be. It would have meant admitting that we needed help, that I couldn't provide everything for my family on my own. And that bothered you more than being cruel to the person providing that help? She started crying harder. I was jealous of you. That surprised me. Jealous of what? Of how much Ryan loved you. Of how much Michael respected you. Of how you seemed to have it all figured out while I was drowning most days just trying to keep up. She wiped her nose with a tissue from her purse. You made mothering look easy. You made everything look easy. And I resented you for it. I set down my coffee cup and really looked at her. Aubrey, I raised my son 40 years ago when being a working mother meant choosing between career and family in ways that would horrify you today. I know exactly how hard it is. I never thought it was easy for you. But you never said anything. You never offered advice or tried to tell me what to do. You just quietly fixed everything from the background, and somehow that made me feel even more inadequate. So you decided to push me out instead of letting me help? I decided to prove I didn't need your help by making sure you knew you weren't essential to our happiness. She laughed bitterly. Except you were essential. You were keeping us alive, and I was too proud and too stupid to see it. We sat in silence for a while, the morning sun streaming through my kitchen windows. I thought about all the times I had wanted to offer advice, to share my experience, to be the mother figure I thought she might need. But every overture had been met with polite deflection. Every attempt to help had been subtly redirected. The counseling, I said finally. Michael said you agreed to counseling. She nodded. I already made an appointment. For next week. Good. Because this pattern, this need to control everyone around you while resenting the people who actually support you, it's going to destroy your marriage and your relationship with your son if you don't deal with it. I know. She looked up at me, her mascara smudged, her perfect facade completely gone. Francis, is there any way you'll reconsider selling the house? Not for me but for Ryan. This is the only home he's ever known. And there it was. Even now, even in the middle of what seemed like genuine remorse, She was still trying to manipulate me. Still trying to use my love for Ryan to get what she wanted. No, I said firmly. The house is sold. You have 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. Her face crumpled. But Ryan's friends, his school, everything he knows is here. Ryan is 18 years old, Aubrey. He's going to college in the fall. He's already leaving this house behind. You're the one who can't let go. But what if we can't find anything in our price range in a good neighborhood? What if Ryan has to change schools for his senior year? What if you take responsibility for your own family's housing instead of expecting me to provide it? I cut her off. You're 43 years old, Aubrey. You've been married for 22 years. It's time you learn to live within your means instead of within mine. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup. When she looked up again, something in her expression had changed. You're really not going to change your mind, are you? No. Even if I promise to do better? Even if I make amends for everything? Especially then. Because if you really want to do better, you need to learn to stand on your own feet. You need to discover what you're actually capable of, when you're not relying on me to catch you every time you fall. She stood up slowly, her hands shaking slightly as she gathered her purse. What if we fail? What if Michael's business isn't stable enough to support a real mortgage? What if we end up having to move somewhere terrible? Somewhere that's not safe for Ryan? Then you'll figure it out. The same way millions of other families figure it out every day. The same way I figured it out when I was your age and my husband died and left me with a mortgage and a child and no safety net. But you had family to help you. I almost laughed. Aubrey, my parents were dead, my husband's parents lived across the country, and I had exactly $300 in my checking account when Michael's father died. I had myself and that was it. And somehow, I managed to raise a son who became a good man and a good father. You'll manage too. She walked to my front door, then turned back. I really am sorry, Francis. For all of it. I know you probably don't believe me, but I am. I believe you're sorry about the consequences, I said gently. I'm not sure you're sorry about the behavior. But maybe counseling will help you figure out the difference. After she left, I finished my coffee and got dressed for the day. At 10 o'clock my phone rang. It was Ryan. Grandma? Can I come see you? Mom told me what really happened with the graduation, and I want to apologize. You don't need to apologize for your mother's choices, sweetheart. Maybe not, but I want to see you anyway. Is that okay? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. That's more than okay, Ryan. That's perfect. 6 months later, I was sitting in my garden on a crisp October afternoon when Ryan knocked on my back door. Grandma, I brought someone I want you to meet. I looked up from the bulbs I was planting to see my grandson standing with a pretty girl with dark curls and bright eyes. She was holding a plate covered with aluminum foil and looking slightly nervous. This is Jessica, Ryan said, his face lighting up in a way that told me everything I needed to know about this girl. She's in my biology class at the community college. Jess, this is my grandmother Frances. Mrs. Walsh, Ryan talks about you all the time. I brought you some of my grandmother's lemon bars. Ryan said you like to bake. I wiped my hands on my gardening gloves and smiled. I love to bake and I love lemon bars. Come in, both of you. I'll make tea. As we settled around my kitchen table, I marveled at the changes 6 months had brought. Ryan was attending the local community college, having decided to save money on his first 2 years before transferring to a 4-year university. He came to dinner every Tuesday and spent most Saturdays helping me with yard work or household projects, the way his father used to do when he was young. How are your parents adjusting to the new apartment? I asked as I served the lemon bars. Ryan's expression grew more serious. Better than I expected, actually. Mom's working part-time at a design firm downtown, and Dad's business is picking up. The apartment's smaller, but it's nice. And honestly, I think they're happier. That surprised me. Happier. Mom says she feels more independent now, like she's contributing instead of just spending. And Dad seems less stressed about money since they're living within their actual budget, instead of pretending they could afford things they couldn't. Jessica squeezed Ryan's hand. He's been helping them a lot with the transition. He's good at finding solutions. I watched my grandson's face as Jessica spoke about him, seeing the young man he was becoming. responsible, thoughtful, kind. Somehow, despite everything his parents had been through, despite the upheaval of losing the house, despite learning the truth about their family's financial situation, Ryan had emerged stronger. And your mother's counseling? I asked gently. She's still going. Twice a week now. She says it's helping her understand why she always felt like she had to compete with everyone instead of just being grateful for what she had. He paused, choosing his words carefully. She asks about you sometimes. Whether you're doing okay, whether you're lonely. What do you tell her? That you're thriving. And I was. For the first time in years, my bank account was growing instead of shrinking. For the first time in years, I was making plans based on what I wanted instead of what someone else needed. I had booked a cruise to Alaska for next spring. Something I had always wanted to do but never felt I could afford. I had joined a book club at the library and made friends with women who knew nothing about my family drama and liked me for who I was, not what I could provide. Grandma, Ryan said, his voice becoming more serious, I need to tell you something. What's that, sweetheart? I know what you did. Selling the house, making us learn to take care of ourselves. I know it wasn't about the money or even about what Mom said at graduation. It was about love. Jessica looked confused, but I understood exactly what he meant. You loved us enough to stop enabling us, he continued. You loved us enough to force us to grow up. And I wanted you to know that I see that now, even if it took me a while to understand. I felt tears prick my eyes. This young man, this wonderful, thoughtful young man who had somehow learned wisdom beyond his years. And I wanted you to know, he said, reaching across the table to take my hand, that I love you for it. Not just for all the years you took care of us, but for knowing when to stop. For caring more about who we could become than who we were comfortable being. After they left, I sat in my kitchen as the sun set, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The phone call that had shattered my illusions. The documents that had revealed the truth. The painful conversations that had forced everyone to face reality. 6 months ago, I had thought I was losing my family, but I hadn't lost anything real. I had simply stopped clinging to something that was never actually mine to begin with. Their love, their respect, their presence in my life, all of it had to be freely given or it wasn't worth having. And in the process of letting go, I had found something I hadn't even known I was missing. Myself. My own life, my own choices, my own peace. The house on Maple Street had sold in 10 days to a young couple with twin toddlers. Margaret had told me they were thrilled with the neighborhood and had already painted the front door bright blue. Sometimes I drove by just to see it, this house that had been such a source of conflict, now simply a home again for a family that chose to be there. Michael and Aubrey had found a 3-bedroom apartment 15 minutes away, well within their actual budget. Michael's construction business was thriving, helped by his newfound motivation to succeed without a safety net. Aubrey had surprised everyone, including herself, by excelling at her design job and discovering she had a talent for helping young couples decorate their first homes on tight budgets. But the real victory was Ryan. Every Tuesday when he knocked on my door for dinner, every Saturday when he showed up to help me plant flowers or clean gutters, every time he called just to tell me about his day, I was reminded that love doesn't require sacrifice to be real. It requires honesty. It requires boundaries. It requires the courage to demand the respect you deserve. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a message I had received that morning from Aubrey. It was the first contact we had had since that morning in my kitchen 6 months ago. Francis, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm grateful for everything you did for us and for everything you stopped doing for us. I'm learning to be a better person, and I hope someday I can be a daughter-in-law you're proud of. Thank you for not giving up on my family, even when I gave you every reason to. I had read it 3 times, looking for the manipulation, the hidden agenda, the request that I knew must be coming. But there wasn't one. It was simply an acknowledgement, an apology, and a hope. I typed back a simple response. I never gave up on your family, Aubrey. I just stopped carrying it. Then I put the phone away and went to check on my roses. Tomorrow was Tuesday and Ryan was coming for dinner. We were going to cook his grandfather's favorite pot roast recipe, and he was going to tell me about his classes and his plans for the future. And for the first time in 12 years, I would be participating in my family's life not as a provider or a safety net, but simply as someone who was wanted there. Someone who belonged. It had taken 71 years, but I had finally learned the difference.